Hey guys, Red Wolf here. Now, if you've been a loyal subscriber of mine, you know that I love the action cartoon genre. And I don't think I need to explain why I love the genre so much. But you've also noticed, based from a few of my past uploads, that I've been very frustrated with the lack of action cartoons on TV these days. I know some people are going to bring up shows like OKKO, Steven Universe, Star vs. the Forces of Evil, and the rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But honestly, I don't think people quite understand the types of action shows I'm looking for. And the rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is very watered down compared to the 2003 and 2012 shows. But I'll save that for a future video. Or hell, just watch a video from a good buddy of mine, Asylum117, who made a video on what an action cartoon is. I'll put the link down below. Now, when you look back at what we used to have back during the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and even the early 2010s, we had a variety of action shows, whether they were based off of comic books, celebrities, movies, or just original shows. But now it seems like networks just want to focus on more comedy and this cow art style, which honestly is a trend that needs to die. Not that I have anything against it, but I just feel as though it encourages cartoon creators to be more lazy with the art style, and not try as hard in giving us story-driven cartoons as if less is more. When you look at these current so-called action shows, they're very watered down compared to past action shows from previous decades since the 80s and even before that. But certain people in the cartoon community just wants to continue to gasp at straws to defend these shows for why the way they are. But I'm not gonna get into that. Now, before I get into my main point of the video, I want to touch upon the belief coming from people that action cartoons are dead. Now look, the way I see it, I don't necessarily think that action cartoons are dead per se. I just think that we've been living in a really dark age for quality Western animated action shows, because there is a lack of the types of shows that we want. And the types of shows that we want are being replaced with these watered down comedic cartoons in the cow art style. I say they're not dead because, for one, we still have the Disney XD, Marvel, and Star Wars shows. And even though I'm not a fan of their shows, I can at least say they have effort put into them, and feel like how an action animated show should feel like. They're not in the caliber of shows like Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes or Spectacular Spider-Man, but it's better than what you're getting from Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, because unlike them, they actually have a variety, 22-minute shows, and actually know how to handle a reboot properly. And this is why I'm often not so harsh towards Disney XD. They're not the best, certainly no Jetix or Toon Disney, but better than Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. But the main point I want to get to in the video of as to why I say that the action cartoon genre isn't dying is because we have Netflix. I mean, when you look at what we have on Netflix, we have Voltron the Legendary Defender, Troll Hunters, Flex Armstrong and the Flex Fighters, Castlevania, and The Dragon Prince. And I've praised all of these shows. Voltron the Legendary Defender is a show that gave me hope for the action genre. I've never seen the original show from the 80s, but the show has definitely gotten a lot of praise from fans, and even fans from the 80s. The show is currently heading on its 8th season, and already has 65 episodes. Whereas if the show were on a certain network like Cartoon Network, the show would have been treated very poorly because of all of the inconsistent scheduling, the lack of a promotion, a hiatus, and then a cancellation because of the lack of toy sales, right? And this is why I'm glad these action shows are on Netflix, because they no longer have to worry about these problems. One of my biggest complaints about action cartoons is that most of them have been canceled for various reasons. The various reasons being low toy sales, reaching the wrong demographic, the animation being too expensive, or the shows being too violent. And the thing is that most of these shows were not canceled for low ratings, which implies that most of these shows had an audience. I look back at a lot of great action shows that were canceled, such as Batman Beyond, Spectacular Spider-Man, Reboot, Young Justice, SWAT Kats, the 2002 He-Man cartoon, Danny Phantom, the 2011 Thundercats, Teen Titans, Symbiotic Titans, Wolverine and the X-Men, and I can go on. And it's very frustrating to me that action shows have always faced this issue. You fall in love with them at first, and then they end without a proper resolution. It's like we can't have nice things anymore. There have only been certain action shows that have luckily had proper endings in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra, Justice League Unlimited, X-Men the Animated Series, X-Men Evolution, and even all of the Ben 10 shows. And I'm sure there are more that I'm missing off of the top of my head. Samurai Jack, while it did have a proper ending, the show still had a cancellation history, which we had to wait over a decade for to be revived. And by the way, the ending was very disappointing. But now that I'm seeing more action animated shows moving to streaming, it makes me rather grateful because I think this may be the best thing for the genre. Because as we know it, TV is dying, or at least not as big as it once was. And the thing about action cartoons being put on these streaming platforms is that they no longer have to worry about toy sales or anything like that. Because now that they're on these streaming platforms, it's going to be about the viewership numbers for these shows, which means they have a better chance of surviving. Perhaps if some of the shows I mentioned were put on these streaming platforms, they would have definitely gotten more seasons, and most likely reached their series finales. Because back in the 90s and 2000s, streaming did not exist yet. The early 2010s was when streaming was growing, and Cartoon Network were still trapped in that 80s, 90s time phase that action cartoons have to sell toys. Which is why shows like Symbiotic Titans, Young Justice, Green Lantern, the Animated Series, and Thundercats 2011 were all short-lived in cancellation, because Cartoon Network didn't understand the way of the future. Perhaps if these shows were put on these streaming platforms, it would have been a whole different story. And there wouldn't be a problem about these shows being too violent, because on streaming platforms like Netflix, there is a lot more freedom to what you can do with these shows. A prime example is Castlevania and Devilman Crybaby, which is why I think if a show like SWAT Kats were to come back through Netflix would be great. Especially knowing the show was cancelled way back in the mid-90s for supposedly being too violent. And by the way, if you're a fan of SWAT Kats, support the revolution. We also have Young Justice coming back on the DC Universe, and I've heard the show will be a bit more mature than it was on Cartoon Network, which is great because it gives Greg Weisman a lot more freedom to what he can do with the show. And also, side note, it was stated by Brandon Vietti on Twitter, who I'm following by the way, that Young Justice Outsiders will premiere either this December or January of 2019, which tells me that Season 3 is around the corner. And if this is true, then thank God, because I know the show was delayed and I was afraid that I had to wait another year for a new season, but if it was going to be delayed for only a month later, then I'm okay with that. But I'm pretty sure it'll come back around January of 2019 since Outsiders was stated to return in 2019. So look out for that. And shout out to Next Gen Striker. He uploads a lot of Young Justice content on his channel, and that right there is a true fan. I even heard that there was going to be an Invincible animated series on Amazon, and that show will also have a mature rating. I've never read the comics, but when this show is released, I will check it out. And that's pretty much all I have to say about why I believe these streaming services are saving the action cartoon genre. To me, it seems like the future is looking bright for the action animated shows. I know I've complained in the past of the lack of action animated shows on TV, and it doesn't seem like we won't be getting the types of action shows we want on TV for a while, as it seems like networks just don't want that genre anymore, or at least for now. However, it doesn't mean that there aren't any quality action animated shows that you can watch currently, because we still have Netflix. And just like Johnson Hood Daypool said, Netflix has much better variety in the animation department than Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. And even Disney XD, even though I don't think they're that bad because to me they're pretty decent. But if you're sick of them too, then go to Netflix. And if you're sick and tired of what the two networks are giving you, especially Cartoon Network, look no farther than Netflix as the best alternative for Western animation. And if you're a person that wants the action animated genre to stay alive, support these shows, especially Young Justice, Who knows, maybe the action cartoon boom period might make a comeback. This is Red Wolf signing out, and I'll see you next time. Peace.